Hi there everyone, Lars here with a very special, interesting video, something that we don't normally do here at Camille's Harem, which is not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And in this particular video today, I want to have a look at the Critics Court, a kangaroo court being led by Film Threat to determine if Disney and Lucasfilm are culpable, if they are guilty of murdering Star Wars. I have to applaud Chris Gore for really being creative with this particular approach, and it's something that I feel is honestly very important for fans and for creators to rally around. You may not like the guy, you may not like the channel Film Threat, you might not like the people that came on for this kangaroo court, but I genuinely think that there is something very important going on here. Some of the very first videos that we did here on YouTube were the sins of the fans and the sins of the writers. I found some real value in doing these videos really early on because when it comes to storytelling, it is a relationship between the storyteller and the audience. And any good relationship is a two-way street. It requires everyone involved to really bring their best to this particular relationship, to the telling of this story. And what we see within the Star Wars fan base is we see the breaking down of a long-standing relationship. And it's one of the things that makes it rather tragic when you watch these people attack or defend the Star Wars saga, especially under Disney, because you can tell that there was once so much love and passion there, and it's all come crashing down. Now, we here at Camille's Harem have made it no secret in the past that we do not like the sequel movies to Star Wars. There's a lot that is wrong going on there. There's definitely some beautiful flashiness, there's some fun moments, there's some great moments, but overall it was a bad experience. There's a lot to make fun of, there's a lot to cringe at, and it's low-hanging fruit. It's a whole lot more fun to look at really good stories and analyze them, or to look at really strange abominations and break those down, rather than go for the low-hanging fruit that is Disney Star Wars. However, it is something that has generated so many views, so much clickbait, so much interest over the years, ever since Disney has acquired the property and has supposedly butchered it. That is what's right now being discussed in Critics Court, that now that Chris Gore and friends are bringing everyone together for a very real conversation, this is something that I feel that we need to keep an eye on. And I feel like there's something that novice writers can look at and really benefit from. So if you haven't yet checked out Critics Court, I will leave a link for the first episodes for this ongoing court case in the description below. But to give you a very brief explanation for what's going on here, and then I will provide an analysis of the very first charge and how it was litigated, well, not really litigated, but more debated in this kangaroo court proceeding. I'll get to that. But what we have going on here, and again, I really do appreciate this, is that Film Threat wants the fans of Star Wars to really determine whether or not Disney and Lucasfilm have killed such an amazing, long-standing, transformative franchise that has influenced generations. Now then, there's all different kinds of evidence for and against out there in the world, and what they wanted was they wanted people who believe that Disney has destroyed Star Wars, and those who say no, Disney hasn't destroyed Star Wars, to come together to present their arguments and then to debate them in a setting where there would be mutual respect. Sure, it can get heated because that's what's going to happen in a debate, but that there would be mutual respect, there would be guidelines shown, everyone would be given an equal chance to present their argument and to defend it before arguing things out and then letting the fans determine for themselves what they want. Now then, I will admit that this is more of a show trial than anything else, because the fans who are watching this have already come predetermined to destroy Disney and Lucasfilm. And now I personally might say, yes, they definitely deserve it. The House of Mouse, which has become the House of Ricky Rat, definitely deserves to be dragged through the mud for all the kinds of things that they've done, not just to Star Wars, but to all their other properties. However, again, I really do appreciate the approach that Chris Gore has come to this, where he has asked repeatedly that everyone watching come to these debates, come to these courtroom proceedings with an open mind and allow themselves to be persuaded by solid arguments and to see this argument, this debate over Star Wars and Disney from various perspectives. And maybe we can learn something from this. Maybe we're wrong in certain aspects. Maybe there's something that we can learn that we can take into the future to better ourselves as fans and as creators. And I really, really do appreciate that. Now, there have been 9 different charges brought up against Disney and Lucasfilm for the death of Star Wars. And you can go and you can check them out. Again, links for that will be provided so that way you can see what's going on here. The very first real charge brought up against Disney, which is that Disney and Lucasfilm committed fraud against the fans by promising different things that they would do within the sequel trilogy and then not delivering, was a very interesting opener to this case. This was something that I've really been curious about because it's something that I've heard so many people bring up. Now then, when the sequels trilogy began, I was under no pretense whatsoever that Han, Luke, and Leia would be on the screen at the same time. I was actually just like, if they show up, that'd be great, but I just want new Star Wars. Take me like 100 years into the future, show me something amazing with new organizations of Jedi and Sith, and let's just see where this goes. But for a lot of fans, that was not what they wanted. They wanted to see the characters of the original trilogy return, reunite, have an amazing moments before handing the torch on over to the new characters and then letting the story play out from there. There is, I think, a really good debate to be had there in terms of storytelling of how you transition from one generation to the next. Multiple franchises have done it different ways, but that storytelling aspect was something that really was only very lightly touched on, because again, many of the fans have enshrined this argument around the expectation of Han, Luke, and Leia must be together to do something incredible. That is what we wanted. That was what we were promised. That is what we should have gotten. And I was honestly looking for that particular moment where the prosecution would say, here was the promise. But they actually didn't deliver. Instead, and I'm sorry, Anna the Star Wars girl, you are definitely a fan of history, and as a historian myself, I love your passion, but you as the one who was you as the person who was supposed to set up the opening argument, you focused way too much on just history without establishing a clear argument. And that was one of the things I was hoping for from the prosecution. Show me the moment. Show me the argument. So that way I can rally around and be like, yeah, Disney, you screwed me over. But instead, what they did, without saying that this is what they were doing, they established a modus operandi for Disney, and especially for Bob Iger, when it comes to betraying expectations and betraying promises to the people that he works with. That history was clearly established, but there was no clear argument given saying this is the modus operandi of the House of Mouse, that they make promises and that they break them. So we were promised that we would get Han, Luke, and Leia, but then they broke that promise, and they've done it again and again and again. Therefore, we know that Disney intentionally meant to murder Disney, not murder Disney, but to murder Star Wars and rebuild it in its own weird mouse-eared fashion way. But that wasn't there. And then a lot of the other arguments were just kind of a repeat of the same. And what was weird, one of the best ways I can describe it is that the prosecution bungled a winning hand, and that the defense for Disney and Lucasfilm almost won bluffing with a losing hand, because they came in and they said there is no moment where Disney ever promised us this. Yes, there was advertising, but that is advertising. And storytelling does not mean that you need to use these other characters. And they brought up the fact that George Lucas did not take main characters from the prequel trilogy that he had bouncing around in his mind and unite them in some kind of meaningful way in the in the main Star Wars trilogy, episodes 4 through 6. The best that we can really point out there would be Obi-Wan versus Vader, and then at the end of the Return of the Jedi, where we get to have Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin there together as Force ghosts, watching on as the young generation has overthrown the Empire and moved on. Those are beautiful moments of storytelling, and so you can argue that George Lucas had definitely a great long-term plan right out there, but we also know that George Lucas changed up a lot of the story along the way. So again, there's a whole lot to debate, there's a whole lot to be discussed here, and that is kind of the debate that needed to be had. Instead, what we got, and you're free to check it on out, is that the prosecution against Disney and Lucasfilm meandered for nearly 40 minutes, bringing up a lot of great points, but never enshrining them in a sincere argument. They let the charge stand without bringing up the charge again and hammering it home. This is Disney's modus operandi. They break promises. Here, bam, 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 bam. Take 20 minutes of history, condense it down to 10, and say these are all the instances in which they have done that. There is a pattern, and then boom, this is how they betrayed the fans. And yes, it was never written down in a contract or anywhere that they had to reunite all of the classic characters. That is not there. But they had made promises to the fans through their advertising that this is the kind of story that we were getting. Therefore, they are guilty of false advertising, and the false advertising held certain promises, which once again falls within Disney's modus operandi. And so therefore, it is not a great leap of logic for us to say that they killed Disney by breaking the promise of reuniting the classical characters. That is what should have been argued. And I showed this legal proceeding to others, specifically to my sister, who loves courtroom stuff, loves the kangaroo court, loves the court of public opinion, and she, who hates the sequel trilogy, was like, I don't side with the prosecutors. And this is kind of shocking, where she's like, they bungled a winning argument. And we were both kind of in shock about this, and the defense did a really good job. Then when it came to the whole debate section for the second half of this courtroom, this kangaroo court proceeding, we got a debate that honestly was a step in the right direction, but it's not yet a step in where the fans need to be. One of the best ways that I can describe it is as follows. We are so used to seeing news anchors and people on YouTube like Ben Shapiro coming on in and debating in what I told my students back when I was teaching high school, debating in a manner where it's like using a shotgun. It's shotgun debating, where you come in and you bam, bam, you shoot off all of this buckshot, all of these little pellets, which are little tiny arguments, little factoids that are used to overwhelm your opponent. However, the thing is this, is that what the shotgun style relies on is it relies on people who are overly passionate to just jump on one of those little factoids, fall for one of those little bits of buckshot, dodge that one little piece, and then get sprayed by the rest and get completely overwhelmed. In a proper debate, you wait for your enemy to give their entire argument, you listen to it in full, and then you proceed to dismantle it, which none of that was happening here in this very first courtroom proceeding. They were constantly just pew, 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 shooting all these little fires at one another, all this buckshot. It was crazy. It was really, really hard to follow. That's not a good debate. That is passionate internet arguing, and none of it was swaying to me. And so it's kind of interesting that walking away from a courtroom proceeding where I was asked to have an open mind, so I came in with an open mind, but I still hate Disney Star Wars, that I ended up siding with Disney Star Wars because the prosecution was playing this game wrong and bungled a winning hand. So I hope that in future episodes of Critic's Court that we get the prosecution really bringing their A game, bringing strong arguments that are then backed up by all of the amazing information that they have. Amazing information is great, but as my students learn time and time again, you can have all the information in the world. You can have your phone at your fingertips and you can still suck at making an argument and get torn apart by your opposition, which would be me, the teacher, playing devil's advocate, even if I agreed with my students, because it's like, well, you have that information, but do you know how to utilize that information. And so what I hope to see as Critics Court proceeds is I hope to see an evolution towards proper debate and criticism. And this is what I think we as creatives and as fans can really learn from. It is this. It is you must hear the entire argument from the other side. Think it over. Don't just react. Oh, you will definitely want to react. You'll want to be passionate. Trust you me. I mean, I've got an entire playlist of writers' rants. And oh boy, if you were here for me watching The Rings of Power, you know I got passionate. You know I got angry. But at the same time, I took my time to actually digest each episode, think to what Tolkien was actually writing, what he actually meant, and then comparing it and then seeing what was actually happening here and looking for some solid writing advice that could come out of that. As fans, it is not enough to just be passionate. It is good to be educated in these things that we love. And not to the point where we can brag and lord it over other people. No. We want fans to come together and actually discuss things. It is totally 100% okay to disagree with a fellow fan over something. That is fine, so long as you keep it respectful, which again, I love that Chris Gore asked for respect and for open-mindedness in this kangaroo court of his. This is just, that's what we need to have. Open-mindedness and respect. Please have a return to that for the fans. And for the creators, pay attention to these discussions. You know what kind of story you want to write, and you're going to write it, but it is good to receive that input. There's a reason why you should submit your story to editors and to beta readers, so that way you understand what the audience likes and what they don't. If there is something that you positively love, but no one else likes it, you should axe that darling and find a way to make your story complete without that little bit in that you absolutely loved. Because if you alienate your audience, you won't have the chance to tell them the entire story that you want to tell. And that's the point right here. The audience needs your story, and your story needs them, and you need your story. It is this beautiful symbiotic relationship, but it only works when respect on all sides is shown, when you are able to learn from each other and work together to create the best story that you can. And that's what I really hope that we can get out of these courtroom proceedings. And that's why I'm talking about it. Normally here on Camille's Harem, we are not a reactionary channel. We don't go looking at all of these different articles that are around everywhere or looking at what other YouTubers have said. There's definitely things that some YouTubers have said that I want to discuss, that I want to talk about, but we are primarily a channel about writing. And there is indeed a great opportunity here for us to come together as fans, as creatives, and relearn the very important lessons of respect, of listening, and of learning from each other. So I am looking forward to the next however many episodes we're going to get of Critics Court. There's 8 more charges to go over, more debates to be had, more discussions to be had, and I'm really hoping that both prosecution and defenders will come together for some good solid debates, leave behind the Ben Shapiro nonsense of bringing basically the proverbial shotgun and just blasting off a bunch of buckshot. Because the thing is this, is that really doesn't help anything. It's just a very impassionate way to engage in a topic, but it doesn't actually ever win anyone over. It's not intelligent. It just means I can speak over you, I can talk faster than you, I can hit you with all of these different things. My logic is better than yours, and that was really aggravating. My sister stopped watching because that Star Wars girl used the Ben Shapiro way of debating, and that doesn't work because that doesn't actually communicate anything meaningful. Give a solid argument. Back up that argument. Then listen to the other person give their argument, learn from them, and genuinely pay attention, because there's going to be some things that you might agree with, some things that might actually refute what you've said, and then other things where you realize, oh, they've said something that's incorrect. I now have the chance to actually correct them, and not in a passionate, you're wrong way, but rather, hey, look, we are going to agree to disagree right here, and I know this is the internet. I'm not going to convince you over the internet to change your mind, but here is something that you got wrong right here. Here's a different way of thinking about it. And even if you don't change the other person's perspective, you have earned their respect, and you have both widened your purview, and you've become better people for it. And acting that way will actually win more people on over to the Star Wars fan base, and actually help people to make real informed decisions on whether or not they should continue giving their money to Disney and Lucasfilm for their Star Wars product. I know for me, I'm just really disappointed with their storytelling because it sucks. But whew, okay, so that is all that, that I've had to say here on this matter. Again, links for Critic's Court for this beautiful kangaroo court that Chris Gore and Film Thread have put together. I am so grateful that there's someone out there who is doing this, because I think this is genuinely a good step in the right direction if everyone is willing to learn and to grow from this particular discourse. And I really hope that things just get better and more solid as we move on, as they realize what works and what doesn't, and that both prosecution and defenders will bring their A game, that they'll be passionate, but that they'll be understanding, open-minded, willing to learn, but also willing to stand for their convictions in a way that makes sense, that is properly argued, and that is well backed up by fact. I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, I already know I don't like the House of Mouse and what they've done to Disney Star Wars, but I feel like there's a great opportunity for me to learn here. And if you are a novice author who's looking to learn from the experiences of others, please check out our other videos here on our channel, or especially head on over to our podcast, Camille's Harem, and there you'll be able to learn from all of the Harem, from all of our experiences with writing, and hopefully it will help you progress on your own path and your own dreams to becoming an established author and sharing your stories with everyone. We also have writing exercises over at our Pinterest page that we would love for you to check out. And if you would like to support us, please check out the books that we ourselves have published and give them a review. Let us learn from you about what we can do better or what you really enjoyed. That really helps us out. But in any case, thank you so much for joining us on this adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.